speaker comes with a host of credentials, host of accolades, awards, and experience. Previously, he was a cardiovascular surgeon in medical practice for more than 30 years. During which time, he was part of the Alberta government's Finance Committee under Premiers Lougheed, Getty, Klein, and Stelmach. Since retiring from medical practice, he has become much more involved in politics and is deeply involved in the construction and development of the Alberta Unity Project. He and others have spent countless hours developing our policy and governance, our bylaws, and as of late, our overall business plan, how we're going to do this. He is most astute in describing the features and benefits of Alberta's freedom through independence. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Dr. Dennis Modry. Yeah, you can stand to give him a round of applause. Very much so.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. I'm truly privileged to have the opportunity to address you on behalf of the Alberta Unity Project. Before I begin, I think I know the answer, but let me pose the question. How many here are pleased with the performance of our federal government? Raise your hand. What about our provincial government? Raise your hand. So I assume, therefore, that you're all here because you're looking for a solution. Well, it's fortunate that I'm here then because I have that solution. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we really do have to face the reality that we are facing an existential threat to our very way of life, to our freedoms and prosperity, if we do nothing. You know, it's interesting that very recently there was a report drafted by the chair of public policy at the University of Calgary. He pointed out that ending our oil and gas industry will result in a 1/3 reduction to every Albertan's quality of life and standard of living. Again, if we do nothing. But you know, the future could be incredibly bright if we come together for common cause. It could be brilliant. Now, we have to face reality, ladies and gentlemen. We know that not everyone is on the independence train, but most Albertans want a better deal for Alberta, either within Confederation or without Confederation. Fortunately, we know from a recent poll reported on October the 19th by Mainstream Research that 47% of Albertans already favor independence, decided voters in that particular poll. But what about the rest? The rest want a better deal with the Confederation. Is that possible? Let's consider this. Let's look at fixing Alberta's role within Confederation, or improving Alberta's circumstances within Confederation by ending equalization. It's topical, right? We just had a referendum on ending equalization. Consider ending equalization as a metaphor for ending any federal program that egregiously harms Alberta, that harms your interests and harms your prosperity. Think of it that way. So let's look at ending equalization through the lens of history, the structural imbalance in Canada, and the constitutional hurdles. Because the constitutional hurdles is where the rubber meets the road. So very briefly, you know, historically, Alberta was incorporated into Canada September 1, 1905, by a gentleman by the name of Clifford Sifton, who was responsible. He was the Minister of the Interior in the Liberal government, emphasize Liberal government, of Sir Wilfrid Laurier. But he said something in 1904 that's really prescient. And it's really important that everybody understand what he said in 1904 and ask yourself the question, does that exist today? What he said in 1904, he said, "We desire, and all Canadian patriots desire," when he refers to Canadian patriots, he is referring to those people who live in the regions of Quebec and Ontario. So we desire, and all Canadian patriots desire, that the great trade of the prairies is Alberta's wealth, shall go to enrich our people in the East, to build up our factories and our places of work, and in every legitimate way contribute to our prosperity. No mention of the prosperity of the West, and in particular Alberta. And you know something, ladies and gentlemen? We were a colony in 1905. We remain a colony in 2021, and we continue to be pillaged and plundered for the benefit of the East. At some point, that has to stop. Now, ending equalization started in 1957. We were the beneficiaries of the massive $12 million investment on equalization in 1957. But you know something? Albertans are a rare breed. We have an entrepreneurial spirit, a can-do attitude, a work ethic, second to none. By the late 70s, Alberta was absolutely booming. It was becoming the economic center of power in Canada, and all 5 major banks were moving their head office to Calgary, and one did. There was a massive demographic shift of people and businesses from elsewhere in Canada and the world to Alberta. And why not? Alberta was literally dripping with oil and gold in the streets. But you know something? There was another major movement that was occurring in Canada at that time, and that was the Quebec secessionist movement. And no matter what you think of Pierre Elliott Trudeau or Marc Lalonde, his finance minister at the time, or the financial elites from Bay Street and Montreal, they came up with a brilliant plan. And that was the national energy policy. And it was brilliant for the East, not so much for the West. How was it sold? Ostensibly, it was sold to Canadians by redistributing wealth from Alberta to other regions in Canada so that they would have a similar quality of life and social programs. That's how it was sold. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not the truth, though. The real truth of the national energy policy is 2 key points. Number 1 was to prevent Alberta from ever again becoming the center of economic power in Canada. And number 2 was to buy Quebec's loyalty to Canada with Alberta's wealth. And that is why Quebec gets 2 of every $3 of equalization to this very day, some $13 billion plus or minus every year. Now, Alberta was devastated after that. But after 12 or 14 years, particularly beginning with the Getty government and then the Klein government, that entrepreneurial can-do spirit of Albertans kicked in. So that by the time Ralph Klein stepped away as Premier in 2006, Alberta had a AAA bond rating, no debt, $36 billion in cash and assets on the books, lowest unemployment in history, and the number 2 GDP per capita region in the world.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, we can exceed that if we come together for common cause. But to show you how poor government can result in the exact opposite effect, the following administration to Ralph decided to do a royalty review, ostensibly to get an additional $1 billion of royalty revenue into the Treasury. Didn't work out so well. Very next year they lost $3 billion. Why? Because business exists to provide a product or a service at a competitive advantage so that they can pay their bills, grow their business, and if they're a public company, pay shareholders a dividend. But even more egregious than that, and some of you are aware of this, but it doesn't get much press. Federal government overreach caused $250 billion of planned investment in Alberta to dry up. That $250 billion, when you understand economic theory, a dollar that goes into the economy increases the economy by 5 to 13-fold economic output of that economy. So that $250 billion would have generated at least $1.25 trillion, but potentially as much as $10 trillion of increased economic output in Alberta. So here it is, where we are now. We see the future. We know what Trudeau is intending. 116 years later, no federal government or provincial government has ever protected Alberta's interest. Is it time we do something different? Yeah! So you can see, just understanding history, it's impossible to end equalization or any other egregious program. But what about the structural imbalance that we've endured for the last 116 years? And that is, what I mean by structural imbalance is the lack of representation by population in the federal government, in the parliament. So for example, Prince Edward Island gets to elect one member of parliament for every 40,000 population. Alberta, one for every 130,000 population. Does that even make sense? Of course not. And the Senate is no better. BC and Alberta have 25% of the population, 11% of the Senate seats. So what does that really mean, everybody? It means this. It means that two things. Every federal election will be decided by Ontario and Quebec. And it does, number two, it does not matter the federal government in power, be it liberal, conservative, or something else, they will always pander to the wishes of Quebec and Ontario because that's where the majority of the voters are. Alberta is voter poor but resource rich. So understanding the structural imbalance, does anybody think it's possible to end equalization or any other egregious program that harms Alberta? Right. This is important. Most of you will already be on side with the majority of what I'm saying. But what's really important is to get that message out to another 5 or 10 of your friends, particularly the ones that are sitting on the fence about what to do about Alberta. So let's look at the third hurdle, if you will, to end equalization. Changing the Constitution. There are 5 hurdles to change the Constitution. The first one is you would need a majority vote in the House of Commons to open the Constitution, to change it to benefit Alberta. Then you would need a similar majority vote in the Senate. And third, you would need 7 of 10 provincial legislatures representing 50% of the population. Let me repeat that. 7 of 10 provincial legislatures representing 50% of the population voting in favor to open the Constitution to change it to benefit Alberta. And the fourth hurdle is Quebec, that hasn't even signed the Constitution, feels as though, and has stated this publicly, that they have a veto. Well, whether they have a veto or not, how do you think Quebec is going to decide with respect to ending equalization? When they're the beneficiaries of $13 billion, it's unlikely. But let's suppose they fight it, though, and there's a constitutional challenge. There's the fifth hurdle. Now, there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. 3 are from Quebec, 3 are from Ontario. 1 is from the Maritimes, and 2 are from the entire West. So how do you think a constitutional battle would be decided, would be adjudicated? In favor of Alberta? Not likely. Notwithstanding, it would probably take 10 or 15 or 20 years of wrangling to try and achieve any change to the Constitution to benefit Alberta, particularly in the current environment of woke culture, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, we are truly in a dilemma right now. We're in a dilemma with respect to the planned ending of our oil and gas industry. By 2030, we are now told. But we're going to import oil from Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan, and Nigeria and elsewhere at a higher carbon cost and monetary cost. Does that even make any economic, moral sense at all? Not really. And of course, Alberta is constantly vilified for climate change. You know, for heaven's sakes. You know, we were blessed. Oil was literally dribbling out of the ground in the tar sands. That's how it was discovered. The eco-alarmists out there don't understand that there are over 6,000 products that emanate from a barrel of oil. Everything from the roads that we have to medications such as aspirin and many others, your eyeglasses, cell phones, computers. Can you imagine the woke culture out there without their cell phones and their computers?
Perhaps their clothing.
And with respect to climate change, take one gas plant that generates energy, it sits on 4 acres. To replace that by wind, you would have to usurp 2,500 acres to replace the energy from one gas plant. Does that sound illogical to you? Not really. And of course, we're also faced with this ongoing darn problem of confiscatory federal taxation to the extent that we give Ottawa some $55 to $60 billion every year, of which we get back about 27 of that. Think of what we could do with another $30 to $33 billion if it didn't go to Ottawa and it stayed here. So much. What about, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, as Dr. Hutchinson noted that he is not either. Most of us are not. But you know something? When you hear something enough times from the IMF and from the World Economic Forum and from the media and from the United Nations and from many of our politicians, that we're going to build back better, the Great Reset, really. I look at the Great Reset now in the context of what we've been going through. Think about the Great Reset in this context, ladies and gentlemen. That for you to have the privilege of going somewhere or doing something, you will have to be compliant with whatever the dictate is of that government. That's not freedom. How do people feel about woke culture, cancel culture, critical race theory, rewriting history, tearing down monuments? And how do you feel about the fact that you can't have a civil conversation with someone if you disagree with them because they accuse you of being racist. Is this what our forefathers fought for in 2 world wars?
No.
For this kind of lack of freedom? I don't think so. And I know you all agree. I know you all agree with that. You know, we're now looking at, and maybe you've heard this, that Trudeau wants to determine how far you can drive or how far you can travel by automobile, train, or plane. There'll be a limit to how far you can go if he wants to introduce his plan. How would that even work? Well, I've come up with 2 ideas of how they could do that. One would be to say, if you were driving from Drayton Valley to Calgary, your GPS could automatically cut your car off because you've already used up your carbon credits. Or perhaps another approach. I shouldn't be giving them ideas, but I have a feeling they thought of it already. What about the idea if you're driving from Drayton Valley to Calgary and you decide you're going to gas up in Calgary, but you passed the limit already of how far you're supposed to drive. But when you gas up, automatically at the pump, you're paying 3 times the amount that you paid previously when you gassed up. I don't know if they would do that, but I wouldn't put it past them. So, what do we do about all of this? There are solutions. But you know, I'm reminded by something that Martin Luther King once said. He said, unjust laws are out of harmony with moral laws. We have a legal and a moral responsibility to obey just laws, but we have an equal responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Well, I coined a phrase off that, and I would say unjust governance is out of harmony with moral governance. We have a legal and a moral responsibility to obey just governance, but I would say that we have an equal and more important responsibility to disobey and rid ourselves of unjust governance. So what can we do about it? Well, we thought long and hard about coming up with an idea, with a strategy that's never been done before, but we know has a nearly 100% probability of working. And I'll explain that a bit later. But first, you're aware of what the Alberta Unity Project is about, but I'm going to outline a couple of key things. What we want to do is unite in an inspiring fashion all Albertans, businesses, and organizations to protect their own interests, your own interests, by enabling Alberta to become an independent, sovereign nation. So what would that look like? What's the vision that you should all be thinking about? It's this: that Alberta would become a brand new sovereign constitutional republic that recognizes the supremacy of God as foundational to our Constitution, to civil society, and the rule of law, wherein Alberta becomes the most free and prosperous nation in the world to work, live, raise a family, start a business. Where, for the first time in Canada, First Nations are equal partners with us in the creation of this new nation. And as has been said, where there is no political left or right, there wouldn't need to be one. Where no one is left behind, and where workers' rights are absolutely protected, but business at the same time is allowed to thrive. Why? Because they're the ones creating those jobs for either union workers or non-union workers. And we know how to do this as well, to create the most effective, efficient healthcare, educational, and social services system anywhere in the world. Why do we know that? Because we figured it out. We've drafted it. We know how to do it. We know what has failed, and we know what can work. As well, ladies and gentlemen, this vision means that every one of you, every Albertan, quality of life and standard of living will be significantly enhanced. Everybody's pensions will be massively enhanced. And Alberta itself will become the lowest taxed region in North America, maybe in the world. Maybe we even have the potential, and we figured out a potential strategy to even end property tax. So what is the mission? You heard the purpose, you heard the vision, you heard the mission. What's our mission? Purpose, vision, and mission. What's our mission? Well, it is to engage people like yourself, but many, many more, to inform them, educate them, and inspire them on the rationale and the merits of independence. How we will make it happen, and how we will address the concerns that people may have with respect to independence, and we have those answers as well. But let's be realistic now. Moving on from here, we need a call to action. And here's the call to action. There are 3 key points. The first one is in relation to what I said earlier, that not everybody is on the independence train. There are many people that are on the fence. There are many people that really would like Alberta to stay within Confederation. And this is what we need to do to bring those 2 major paradigms together. Those who are on the independence train, but and those who want independence within Canada. Neither of those objectives are achievable without one thing: leverage. And the only leverage that can bring about either paradigm is the leverage of a successful referendum on independence. Why? Because a successful referendum on independence gives us moral and legal legitimacy to chart a new path forward for Alberta. That's the first bit of information to understand. The second part of this is to grow the membership of the Alberta Unity Project to 500,000 or more. Now, why is that a call to action? Because a study out of Harvard indicated that 3.5% of the electorate, of the voting public, will change the course of society. Well, when UCP was elected, they had 120,000 members in the last provincial election. The Alberta electorate is 3,400,000 people. That's the number of people who could vote in the next election. 3.5% of that is 120,000 people. 500,000 people is 15% of the electorate. So, if we have 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 1 million people involved with the Alberta Unity Project as members, we have the ability to do several things. One is certainly to influence the outcome of the next provincial election. And what we would do is we would support an independence-focused government that has embraced the policies and governance, the bylaws, and the CA rules, which keep elected officials accountable in a way in which they have never been held accountable before. So what are the options? Well, the options even include, if Kenny is replaced by someone who is independence-focused and can get that caucus to follow along, then 5, 6, 700,000 members could ensure that UCP is elected again. But right now I don't think that's possible, and I don't think it's going to work. So what's the alternative? The alternative would be to consider supporting another one of the independence parties. What we're trying to do actually is we're trying to unite those independence parties. Whether that'll be successful or not, we'll have to see. But the third possibility, and Doug touched on it, and I think someone else touched on it as well, the third possibility is, ladies and gentlemen, we are an educational project right now. But 5, 6, 700,000 members, if you all decided you wanted a new party, then you would create a new party, call it the Alberta Unity Party if you want. You could elect that party with a majority in the 2023 election, because we know that the numbers would guarantee that you would be electing an independence-focused party, because it's your party. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create that movement to achieve that objective. I feel the hook is coming here real soon, so I'm gonna say just one other thing, and then I'm gonna wrap up. The other thing is, and it's been touched on, is we do need to generate 5 to 6 to 700,000 members. So do get involved, and we'll help you in any way we can to work with us. Now, the prizes, and this is my last comment, the prizes for independence are spectacular and they're numerous. They include, for example, we can be the tip of the spear to burst that socialist bubble that's enveloping the world right now. Number 2, the retention of $60 billion of federal taxation. We would rapidly eliminate our debt. We would rapidly decrease your taxes and increase your wages as a result. There would be massive investment into this province. And once again, we would have oil and gold bubbling in the streets. This would be the literal best place in the world to work, live, raise a family, and start a business. And you folks are part of the parade to make that happen. That's what Ralph used to say. You know, he said, find a parade and get in front of it. We're trying to create that parade. Please be part of it. Thank you very much.
Dr. Dennis Mulgrew. Thank you, Dennis. What an inspiring speech. Wow. Well, a couple more things we're going to do. I wanted to say, did you know that the Premier of Quebec has recently turned down natural resource development in that province? Most people don't know that there's scabs of oil and natural gas in Quebec, especially in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. But why would they want to develop their resources when they get $13 billion of equalization payments every year free, no strings attached from us? Alberta actually is the spear point of our Prime Minister's carbon reduction plans. In the meantime, we have a guest who we're going to invite up. This fellow is the CEO of a private investment bank based in Calgary. He has chosen a role in financing, or fundraising I should say, for the Alberta Unity Project. Recently he secured a 5,000 square foot fully furnished office in Edmonton to be used as our main headquarters for the Alberta Unity. This is a donation of all things. Ladies and gentlemen, this is serious business. When somebody will make a donation like that, and that donation of the premises comes from Neil McGivery, the owner of Camville Developments. Ladies and gentlemen, for a quick chat, please welcome Dale Lake. Where is Dale?
I look at the world through the lens of a transaction. I'm sorry, I look at the world through the lens of a transaction. If you look at my resume, it's a life of transactions. Well, and I look at the world through closing deals. So, the top 3 selling words in the English language are you, free, and money. You will have no freedom, you will have no money if we don't close this deal. It's a very simple transaction. Now, I actually am here because of Roger Hodgkinson and Dennis Modry. But I'm also now, I'm here because of you. It becomes very easy when I sit in front of everybody talking, listening, and listen to Dennis Modry. I listen to him a lot, and he's become a very good friend. But I come back to again, this transaction of getting Alberta free is, there's only one transaction. So I'd like to thank you very much. I was happy to be able to get the office space, and we'll start the ball rolling. You have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you very much, Bill. You know, I lived and worked in China for 5 years, and I was there when the real big boom was on, and I thought to myself, my goodness, we were independent from Canada, I guess. The amount of, we grow everything, we produce everything, and it's unimaginable. One of these days I'm going to give a talk on China and what it's about. In the meantime, it's time to introduce our second to last presenter. He hails from Lloydminster. He's an industrial organization economist. He has studied under some of the most prominent industrial organization economists in North America. He is published, he's a published author, and a public speaker. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Tanner Nide.
You have just heard Dr. Modry say that if we do nothing regarding our oil and gas, our quality of life might reduce by a third. Mayor Gondek in Calgary has just declared a climate emergency. Our Prime Minister said no more coal-fired plants for baseload electricity. But I hope they know that for the whole comprehension of our species' short but storied existence, until just about 200 years ago, humans lived to the ripe old age of 30, and then they died. But that's really not that surprising. Just nature alone, with its poisonous plants, dangerous terrain, powerful creatures, and a grueling climate, has never been a natural companion, but a killer. And our sojourn east of Eden has been marred, thus, by tribulation. But when I visited Southern California just a few years ago, I realized very quickly that not very many understand the severity or the intensity of nature's perpetual war it wages against man, like we do. After all, you and I remember learning about the ingenuity of the pioneers insulating their homes any way they could in a battle to keep their families warm in this desolate tundra. But that was the old reality. That was the one our ancestors knew. Something has changed for us, and everyone knows it. Has the atmosphere mellowed? No. Have our winters become a warm oasis? No. But we no longer bank the coal furnace at 5 o'clock in the morning. We no longer sleep in granaries in the summer trying to keep cool. And the former dread of howling snowstorms, once ominous, even deadly, has been transformed into an invitation for a family to retire, to watch a movie together, and to nourish their spirits with bottomless cups of hot chocolate. What has propelled humanity into this new dynasty of innovation and comfort? What was the shuttle that evacuated the old way of life and slipped the harsh and hard demands of survival for something new? You know it. I know it. Even the radical environmentalist knows it. It's not government. It's not postmodernism. It's certainly not the theories of the radical ideologues in the universities. It's the antithesis of socialism, the opposite of a welfare state, the enemy of centralized economic regimes. You see, it's because of oil that hospital lights stay lit during a blizzard. It's because of fertilizer that drought no longer means starvation. And it's because of lumber that our homes are no longer made of sod. It's because of the free market, of open trade economics, unleashing the brilliance of men and women like yourselves, exercising your remarkable imaginations and employing your skills to produce all sorts of goods and services that better your lives and the lives around you. It's because of your economic innovation, produced right here in Drayton Valley, whether beside us at Weyerhaeuser or on the farm or in the patch. And it's because of that economic freedom that Alberta generates and cherishes the highest standard of living in the world. But you must ask if this innovation is a good thing. You must do so because Mr. Trudeau asked. He concluded it's not. He doesn't believe our enjoyment, our safety, and our ease of life, digging roads with excavators rather than shovels, driving to school rather than hitching up a team of horses to a stone boat, and planting 25 acres of wheat an hour rather than 4 is a good thing. I say so because the Liberal government promised to hit oil and gas heavy with impossible emissions caps.
Then he should fly to Freedom.
Ah, amen, he shouldn't. That's exactly right. Farmers can't find fertilizer because the Canadian government committed to a devastating emissions reduction program on nitrogen fertilizer of 30%. And as you know, at Weyerhaeuser, an uncompetitive softwood tariff has been drastically increased and imposed by America without the slightest resistance from our government. As Dr. Motry said, none of these things make sense economically. You do not need to be an economist to recognize that. None of the federal government's economic policies make sense. Not for Alberta, anyway. Unless a few powerful men and women, fortified in the Eastern Bloc, justifying unjustifiable policies with their immoral climate crusade, want to tear down our society and rebuild it in the contemptible image of Marx or Lenin or Castro or a frightening new government order. Never mind that none of their climate models have ever come true. Never mind that climate science is one of the most politicized sciences in the world. Never mind that the economic production of oil and lumber and agriculture have saved billions of lives and increased the standard of living for billions more. Never mind that not even the richest kings of every previous generation could ever fathom the quality of life that we enjoy today thanks to industry. Mr. Trudeau and his entourage of radical environmentalists declare our way of life undesirable, unwanted, unacceptable. So, they capture economic theories they know that work, like free markets and deregulation, and legislate shackled markets with regulation, demonstrable regulation, as the Canadian government suffocates our industry and with their climate policies threaten our way of life. But we have gathered here today to declare to Mr. Trudeau and every other official who wants to serve a corrupted parliament and crush us with a strict tyranny, leave Alberta alone. That's why we promote independence. In the first place, an independent government couldn't be ashamed of our economic enterprise. And it wouldn't be a government that calls our oil dirty in front of thousands of protesters at COP26 and then proceeds to tax it into oblivion to pay for the fuels in their private jets. An independent Alberta recognizes the intellect required to drill for oil, and that farming is a precise science. It is a nation that provides or promotes our ethical oil, our refineries, our mills, our farms, and our industry. An independent Alberta champions and protects the rights of Albertans in a guarantee of the freedom that we deserve, so that our story, east of Eden, is one of triumph and law and justice, and at the helm, the supremacy of God, while ensuring our economic industry is released from a hostile Canadian government's detention and is given back to you, Alberta. Thank you.
Mr. Tanner today. I'm always amazed at the depth and the astuteness of the people that are in the AUP, aren't you? They're wonderful. All right, our last speaker. Our last speaker will present the final remarks for the event and will host the Q&A. He originates from Quebec. I originate from Quebec too. Makes no never mind. His parents were highly involved in the separatist movement in the 1980s. His mother tongue is French, but as you will soon hear, his English is impeccable. Besides being a highly skilled in computer technology and software development, he is our videographer and software development videographer for these events and our group secretary. He is the father of 5. Husband to one of 36 years, and views Alberta's independence as something worth fighting for himself and his family. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Alain Gauthier.
Thank you, Dad. Yeah, I immigrated to Alberta reluctantly in 1980. At the time I was working with IBM as an engineer. And long story short, I came here for a 6-month contract. I forgot the count. A few years later, went back to university, property management, then went back to university, Bachelor of Theology, met my wife in college. They call those marriage college, I think. And we met my wife, we married, and she promised me that she married me for the money, and she'd stay by me until she found it. She kept her word. She's still with me. We have 5 kids. My daughter Ashley is here in the back. Proud Nakota Stoney Nation. Probably one of the few non-immigrants in this room. Let's talk about Quebec, since that's one of two offenders, I think, in our federation. And the referendum on sovereignty, there was two of them, two official referendums in 1980 and then 95. But prior to that, there was a lot of stirring and a lot of difficulties. So what's sovereignty? Sovereignty is the authority of a people to govern itself. It's not violent. It's not what the FLQ saw back in the 70s. It's just our ability to govern ourselves. So the loss of the 1980 referendum, which was in May and I came here in September, was quite a disappointment for many of us. And many of us left Quebec. Many of French Canadian went other parts and just said, screw you, you guys gave up. Over time as I came here, because believe me, I was told all kinds of horror stories. First of all, the feather and tar that you hear in the cartoon, I was told that was be my destiny here in Alberta. Didn't happen. I realized that there was a problem with the Federation very early and started questioning a lot of stuff I had heard. And there was a couple of spoiled children in the family. And I learned that, contrary to what I was told, it was not Alberta, it was not Saskatchewan, it was not British Columbia, but it was Quebec and Ontario. And I'll just speak about Quebec because that's the one I know the best. So as I said before, the Federation is broken. Should we be mad at Quebec? Should we think that the population of Quebec gave up? I was wrong to think that because I don't think they did. Because here's what happened. Whatever you think, Quebec, soon Alberta, got what they wanted. Why keep fighting? Why else? How else would you describe 22% of the population gets 2/3 of all transfer money? Did you know that Quebecers pay 16% less taxes than the rest of the provinces to the federal government? Yet they still get 2/3 of the money. That's a good deal. I wouldn't leave. And they won't. They got what they wanted because they had that specter of independence and the rest of Canada buckled down under them. The last thing they wanted was the Western provinces to get back in good financial stance and start taking over. I also learned that anger toward one province or one population is really a waste of time. It's not the people living in Ontario, Quebec, or some part of BC that are our enemies. I don't think they are enemies. I think it's the MPs, the MLAs, some of the bureaucrats. Those are the problem. And someone mentioned about burning the system. Nonviolence is the big thing. So, should we give trying up, working with the people around us to get a fair deal? I say no. We don't have to give up. But can we get that fair deal under the current system? I think Dennis has explained that quite well. So did Tanner. The Federation is broken. We just can't get what we need from them. We don't have the power that Ontario and Quebec have. We don't have the votes. We don't have the Senate. We don't have the House of Commons. We don't have it. So how do we get leverage within Canada? So I moved my mic all over the place. So think about that specter of a sovereign Alberta. What is that going to do to that Laurentian elite, to those governing us in Ottawa? That's going to make them shake in their boots. Are they going to just stand by and let us go? No, they're going to do exactly what they did in Quebec. They'll send a plague of politicians. I know what a word than that. I was looking for different words for how you get a bunch of crows come at you. It's a murder of crows, and I thought the word was too violent. Ravenous politicians coming over for the only reasons to save themselves, and then fear-mongering would happen. I saw it happen in Quebec during the 1980 referendum. We were told that the Brinks trucks would be lining up on St. Catherine and Sherbrooke, 2 streets in Montreal, to move our money out to Toronto. We were told that we'd lose all trades with the rest of Canada, and that as a French country, because that was the biggest thing for Quebec, still is language, the US would not trade with us. Utter nonsense. We were told pensioners would lose their income. I already heard that one here. Savings would disappear from the bank. Heard that one too. Imagine we would lose the security blanket bestowed upon us from a benevolent federal government. Do we have a benevolent federal government anywhere? Do we have any benevolent MPs? And now I'm even thinking we don't have any MLAs that are actually working for us. So we were told many lies. Alberta too. We're lying about our dependence upon Eastern Canada, this benevolent group of shysters, to survive. We were told that without Quebec and Ontario, we lose everything. We're told things like we don't have tidewater access. People, imagine the worst case scenario. We still have all the resources we need in Alberta. From milk, to bread, to real meat. Nothing against the woke people that likes that soya stuff, but it tastes like crap. I'm sorry. We have cheap, clean energy that can be used to power the manufacturing of anything we want to build. Think of something that we're missing, we can build a plant. With all the money that's been mentioned, we can build it, tax-free. We can build it. Our universities and technical schools are top of the world in the quality of education. We have the brain and the strength in our young people to build a better future for the next generations. I'm 64 years old, I could just go sit down, get my pension and give up. You know, I still, hopefully another 20 or some years. My family, they all live in their 90s, so maybe 30 years, so I better be smart. So this gets me mad. This gets me mad to see history repeating itself, that people are beaten down to make a decision that's against them. Now Quebec, they negotiated their thing, and Trudeau and all of these, and the Meat-Schlick Accord, which Quebec really didn't like anyway, but they still have veto in their mind. Quite a joke. So it's time, what do we do when you're mad, right? You can get mad at somebody and just walk away. Or you can get mad against somebody and stand up for yourself. And in our case, we need to stand up and walk away. So as long as you do something about it, getting mad is fine. But you know, it's okay to stand up for justice too. People are losing their job for mandates that have no base on what they really like to talk about all the time, science. People are at the brink of bankruptcy, losing their livelihood. People can't go to work because if they're a single parent, they have to stay home with the kids because the kids are not getting vaccinated, they can't go to school. A very good plan they have. Attack the children, then you've got the rest of the population tied up if we don't stand up. And for those that are, I'm a chaplain, I'm a local chaplain in Edmonton. As a Christian, I can tell you that, and it's very biblical, when there's injustice, it is our Christian duty to not stand on the side, but it is a Christian duty to resist tyranny and defend those who cannot defend themselves. For me, this is something very divisive in the society right now, but for me it starts with the unborn. You stand wherever you want, but I have to say that for me. What side are you on? Thank you all. Take a stand, and thank you very much for tonight.